Hare Krishna. Welcome to today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're continuing where we left off yesterday at verse 42 of the 25th chapter of the third canto, chapter entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. As always, we recite the glorification verses of Sanatana Goswami. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyushan Sarva Vedaika Satphalam Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikpradam Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhum Kalidvanto Dita Ditya Shri Krishna Parivartitam Paramananda Patnaya Prema Vakshaksharayate Sarvanda Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishna Namostame Madeka Bandho Matsangin Madguru Matmahadana Madnishtaraka Madbhagya Madrananda Namostate Asadu Sadutadain Atini Chochataraka Hanamuncha Kadachin Mam Premna Hrit Kantayos Puram. Translation. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing reading today with where we left off at verse 42. Translation. It is because of my supremacy that the wind blows. So still the Supreme Personality of Godhead speaks to Devahuti. It is because of because of my supremacy that the wind blows out of fear of me. The sun shines out of fear of me, and the Lord of the clouds, Indra, sends forth showers out of fear of me. Fire burns out of fear of me, and death goes about taking its toll out of fear of me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, says in Bhagavad Gita that the natural laws being enacted are correct in all activities because of his superintendence. No one should think that nature is working automatically without superintendence. The Vedic literature says that the clouds are controlled by the demigod Indra, heat is distributed by the sun god, the soothing moonlight is distributed by Chandra, and the air is blowing under the arrangement of the demigod Vayu. But above all these demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the chief living entity. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanash Chaitananam. The demigods are also ordinary living entities, but due to their faithfulness, their devotional service attitude, they have been promoted to such posts. These different demigods or directors, such as Chandra, Varuna, and Vayu, are called Adhikari Devata. The demigods are departmental heads. The government of the Supreme Lord consists not only of one planet, or two or three. There are millions of planets and millions of universes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a huge government, and he requires assistance. The demigods are considered his bodily limbs. These are the descriptions of Vedic literature. Under these circumstances, the sun god, the moon god, the fire god, and the air god are working under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Madhyakshena Prakriti Suhete Sacharacharam 9:10. The natural laws are being conducted under his superintendence. Because he is in the background, everything is being performed punctually and regularly. One who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely protected from all other influences. He no longer serves or is obliged to anyone else. Of course, he is not disobedient to anyone, but his full power of thought is absorbed in the service of the Lord. The statements by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila, that under his direction the air is blowing, the fire is burning, and the sun is giving heat, are not sentimental. The impersonalist may say that the Bhagavatam devotees create and imagine someone as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and assign qualifications to him. But actually, it is neither imagination nor an imposition of artificial power in the name of Godhead. In the Vedas, it is said, Bishasmat vata pavate bishodeti suryaha. By fear of the Supreme Lord, the wind god and the sun god are acting. Bishasmat agnish chandrascha mrityurdyavati panchamaha. Agni, Indra and Mrityu are also acting under his direction. These are the statements of the Vedas. Text 43. The yogis, equipped with transcendental knowledge and renunciation and engaged in devotional service for their eternal benefit, take shelter of my lotus feet, and since I am the God, the Lord, they are thus eligible to enter into the kingdom of Godhead without fear. Purport. One who actually wants to be liberated from the entanglements of this material world and go back home, back to Godhead, is actually a mystic yogi. The words explicitly used here are yuktena bhakti yogena. Those yogis or mystics who engaged in devotional service are the first-class yogis. The first-class yogis, as described in Bhagavad Gita, are those who are constantly thinking of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. These yogis are not without knowledge and renunciation. To become a bhakti yogi means to automatically attain knowledge and renunciation. That is the consequent result of bhakti yoga. Or is it consequent? Anyway. Huh? Consequent. Yeah. In the Bhagavatam 1st canto, 2nd chapter, it is also confirmed that one who engages in the devotional service of Vasudeva, Krishna, has complete transcendental knowledge and renunciation, and there is no explanation for these attainments. Ahaituki, without reason, they come. Even if a person is completely illiterate, the transcendental knowledge of the scriptures is revealed unto him simply because of his engagement in devotional service. That is also stated in the Vedic literature. To anyone who has full faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Spiritual Master, all the import of the Vedic literatures is revealed. He does not have to seek separately. The yogis who engage in devotional service are full in knowledge and renunciation. If there is a lack of knowledge and renunciation, it is to be understood that one is not in full devotional service. The conclusion is that one cannot be sure of entrance into the spiritual realm in either the impersonal effulgence of the Lord or the Vaikuntha planets within that Brahman effulgence, unless he is surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. The surrendered called Akuto Bhaya. They are doubtless and fearless, and their entrance into the spiritual kingdom is guaranteed. 44. Therefore, persons whose minds are fixed on the Lord engaged in the intensive practice of devotional service. That is the only means for attainment of the final perfection of life. Purport. Here the words Mano Mayarpitam, which mean the mind being fixed on me, are significant. One should fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna or his incarnation. To be fixed steadily in that freedom is the way of liberation. Ambarish Maharaj is an example. He fixed his mind on the lotus feet. He spoke only on the path of the flowers and tulasi offered to the Lord. He walked. He engaged his hands in cleansing the temple. He engaged his tongue in tasting the foodstuff offered to the Lord. And he engaged his ears for hearing the great pastimes of the Lord. In that way, all his senses were engaged. First of all, the mind should be engaged at the lotus feet of the Lord, very steadily and naturally, because the mind is the master of the senses. When the mind is engaged, all the senses are engaged. That is bhakti yoga. Senses are controlled in the proper sense of the term. They are a child. How long it down? It is not possible. Even Arjuna said, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. The mind is always is to fix the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. Mano mayarpitam stiram. If one seriously engages in Krishna consciousness, that is the highest perfectional stage. All Krishna conscious activities are on the highest perfection level of human life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 25th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Glories of Krishna Service. So we finished 25th. We are continuing chapter 26, entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. So here Kapila Dev narrating to his mother. Text 1. The personality of Kapila continued. My dear mother, now I shall describe unto you the different categories of the Absolute Truth, knowing which any person can be released from the influence of the modes of material nature. Purport. Only through devotional service, bhaktyamam abhijanati, the object of service is mam. And some philosophy is especially meant for persons who are conditioned by this material world. It is generally understood by the parampara system or by the science of devotional service. Preliminary studies of devotional service have already been explained. Now the analytical study of devotional service will be explained by the Lord, who says that by such an analytical study one becomes freed from the modes of material nature. The same assertion is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Tato mam tattvato jnatva. By understanding the Lord according to various categories, one can become eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. This is also explained here. The modes of nature, becoming freed from the spell of material nature, becomes eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. As long as one has even a slight desire to enjoy or lord it over material nature, there is no chance of his being freed from nature's material modes. Therefore, one has to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead analytically, as explained in the Sankhya system of philosophy by Kapila Dev. It could suit me, it sounds like. I don't know about you. As long one has even a slight desire to enjoy or lord it over material nature, there is no chance of his being freed from the influence of nature's material. To understand Supreme Lord analytically, as explained in Sankhya. Okay. I didn't know that. So text 2. I'm really excited. Text 2. Knowledge is the ultimate perfection of self-realization. I shall explain that knowledge unto you by which the knots of attachment to the material world are cut. Purport. It is said that by proper understanding of the pure self, or by self-realization, one can be freed from material attachment. Knowledge leads one to attain the ultimate perfection of life and to see oneself as he is. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.8 also confirms this. Tam eva viditvati mrityu eti. Simply by understanding one's spiritual position or by seeing oneself as he is, one can be freed from material entanglement. In various ways, the seeing of oneself is described in the Vedic literatures, and it is confirmed in the Bhagavatam, Purushasya Atma Darshanam, that one has to see oneself and know what he is. As Kapila Dev explains to his mother, this seeing can be done by hearing from the proper authoritative source. So seeing can be done by hearing. That's nice. step. Greatest authority, personality of Godhead, and if someone accepts whatever is explained it as it is without interpretation, then he can see himself. Lord Chaitanya explained to Sanatana Goswami the real constitutional position of the individual. He said directly that each and every individual soul is eternally a servitor of Krishna. Jivera Swarupahai Krishnera Nityadas. Madhya Lila 20:108 verse. Every individual soul is eternally a servitor. When one is fixed in the understanding that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Soul and that his eternal position is to serve in association with the Supreme Lord, he becomes self-realized. This position of right cuts the knot of the material attraction, Hridaya Granthi Bedanam. Due to false ego or false identification of oneself with the body and the material world, one is entrapped by Maya. But as soon as one understands that he is qualitatively the same substance as the Supreme Lord, because he belongs to the same category of spirit soul, and that his perpetual position is to serve, one attains Atma Darshanam and Hridaya Granthi Bedanam, self-realization. When one can cut the knot of attachment to the material world, his understanding is called knowledge. Okay, so this is real knowledge. Atmadarshana means to see oneself by knowledge. Therefore, when one is freed from the false ego by the cultivation of real knowledge, he sees himself, and that is the ultimate necessity of human life. The soul is thus isolated from the entanglement of the 24 categories of material nature. Pursuit of the systematic philosophic processes called Sankhya is called knowledge and self-revelation. Okay, so text 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Soul, and He has no beginning. He is transcendental to the material modes of nature and beyond the existence of this material world. He is perceivable everywhere because he is self-effulgent, and by his self-effulgent luster, the entire creation is maintained. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described as being without beginning. He is Purusha, the Supreme Spirit. Purusha means person. When we think of a person in our present experience, that person has a beginning. This means that he has taken birth and that there is a history from the beginning of his life. But the Lord is particularly mentioned here as Anadi, beginningless. If we examine all persons, we will find that everyone has a beginning, but when we approach a person who has no beginning, he is the Supreme Person. That is the definition given in the Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Parama Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna, the Supreme Controller. He is without beginning, and He is the beginning of everyone. This definition is found in all Vedic literatures. The Lord is described as the soul or spirit. What is the definition of spirit? Spirit is perceivable everywhere. Brahman means great. His greatness is perceived everywhere. And what is that greatness? Consciousness. We have personal experience of consciousness, for it is spread all over the body. In every hair follicle of our body we can feel consciousness. This is individual consciousness. Similarly, there is superconsciousness. The example can be given of a small light and the sunlight. The sunlight is perceived everywhere, even if it is experienced within a specific limit. Similarly, our consciousness is perceived within a limit of our particular body, but it is perceived everywhere. Oh, sorry, just hold on. He is present everywhere. It is said in the Vishnu Purana that whatever we find anywhere, distribution of the energy of the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita also, it is confirmed that the Lord is all-pervading and exists everywhere by His two kinds of energy, one spiritual and the other material. The spiritual and material energy everywhere, and that is proof of the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The existence of consciousness everywhere is not temporary. It is without beginning, and because it is without beginning, it is also without end. The theory that consciousness develops at a certain stage of material combination is not accepted herein, for the consciousness which exists everywhere is said to be without beginning. The materialistic theory is the result of a combination of matter is not acceptable. Matter is not beginningless, it has a beginning. As this material body has a beginning, the universal body does also. And as our basis of our soul, the entire gigantic universal body has begun on the basis of the Supreme Soul. The Vedanta Sutra says, Janmadi Asya, this entire material exhibition, its creation, its growth, maintenance, and its dissolution. In Bhagavad Gita also, the Lord said, I am the beginning, the source of birth. The Supreme here, He is not a temporary person, nor does He have a beginning. He is without a cause, and means beyond. Material nature do not touch Him. It is material lights being a reflection of another, just as moonlight is a reflection of the sunlight. Sunlight is also the reflection of the Brahma Jyoti. Similarly, Brahma Jyoti, the spiritual effulgence, is a reflection of the body of the Supreme Lord. This Yasya Prabha Prabhavataha. The Brahma Jyoti or Brahman effulgence is due to his bodily luster. Therefore it is said here, Swayam Jyotihi, He Himself is light. His light is distributed in different ways as the Brahma Jyoti, as sunlight and as moonlight. But it confirms that in the spiritual world there is no need of sunlight, moonlight, or electricity. The Upanishads also confirm this. Because the bodily luster of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sufficient to illuminate the spiritual world, there is no need of sunlight, moonlight, or any other light or electricity. This self-illumination also contradicts the theory that the spirit soul or the spiritual develops at a certain point in material combination. The term Swayam Jyoti indicates material reaction. The concept of the Lord's all-pervasive due to His illumination everywhere. We have experienced that the sun is situated in one place, but the sunlight is default. That is situated in His personal body in the spirit beyond that by the sun, and the sunlight by the moon globe. Although He is situated in His own abode, His light is distributed all over the spiritual and material worlds. The Brahma Samhita confirms this. Goloka eva nivasat akilatma bhut. He is living in Goloka, but still He is present all over the creation. He is the Supersoul of everything, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He also although He is undoubtedly a person, He is the Purusha of this material world. Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand that beyond this material world there can be a person. Therefore they are impersonal, but it is explained the personality existence. It is of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Gunam means invested with the three modes of material nature. When the material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, this Gunamayim energy acts as a manifestation of the modes. It acts as a covering. The energy emanated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests in two ways, as an emanation from the Supreme Lord and as a covering of the Lord's face. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that because the whole world is illusioned by the three modes of material nature, the common conditioned soul, being covered by such energy, cannot see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The example of a cloud is very nicely given. All of a sudden there may appear a big cloud in the sky. This cloud is perceived in two ways. To the sun, the cloud is a creation of its energy, but to the ordinary common man in the conditioned state, it is a covering to the eyes. Because of the cloud, the sun cannot be seen. It is not that the sun is actually covered by the cloud, only the vision of the ordinary being is covered. Similarly, although Maya cannot cover the Supreme Lord, who is beyond Maya, the material energy covers the ordinary living entities. The conditioned souls who are covered are individual living entities, and he from whose energy Maya is created is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In another place, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, 7th chapter, it is stated that Vyasadeva, by his spirit vision, saw the Supreme Lord, and the material in him creates Lord, in comparison to that of the sun. Darkness can cover a small cave, but not the open sky. Similarly, the covering capacity of the material energy and cannot act on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is therefore called Vibhu. As the appearance of the cloud is accepted by the sun, so the appearance of the material energy at a certain interval is accepted by the Lord. Although his material energy is utilized to create the material world, this does not mean that he is covered by that energy. Those who are covered by the material energy are called conditioned souls. The Lord accepts the material energy for his material pastimes in creation, maintenance, and dissolution. But the conditioned soul is covered. He cannot understand that beyond this material energy there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes. Just as a less intelligent person cannot understand that beyond the covering of the clouds there is bright sunshine. Text 5. Divided into a variety of threefold modes, material nature creates the forms of the living, and the living entities, seeing this, are illusioned by the knowledge covering feature of the illusory energy. Purport. Material energy has the power to cover knowledge. Covering cannot be applied to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is applicable only to the prajaha, or those who are born with material, the conditioned souls of material in Bhagavad Gita literature. 12. Nicely explained that although the motion and ignorance are born of the Supreme Personality of God, he is not subject to them. In other words, the energy emanating from the Personality of God cannot act on the conditioned soul's material energy. The Lord is the Father of all living entities because he impregnates material. Therefore, the conditioned souls get bodies created by the material energy. The Father of the living entities is aloof from the three modes. It is stated in the previous verse that the material energy was at exhibit pastimes for the living entities who wanted to enjoy and lower material energy through the environment. Why this material world was created for the sufferings of the conditioned souls is the enjoying temperament of the conditioned souls. It is the enjoyer, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This material energy, anyone who pretends to enjoy. An example can be here that there is no necessity for the government's creation of the separate police department, but because it's a fact that some of the citizens will laws, a department to deal with criminals is necessary. There is no necessity, but at the same time, similar necessity to create this world for the sufferings of the, but at the same time, there are certain living entities known as Nitya Bhava, eternally conditioned. We say they've been conditioned from time immemorial because no one can trace out when the living entity, the part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, became rebellious against the supremacy of the Lord. It is a fact that there are two classes of men: those who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Lord and those who are atheists or agnostics, not accept his own religious path. Without tracing out the beginning of the existence of these two classes, we can take it for granted that some of the living entities revolted against the laws of the Lord. Such entities are called conditioned souls, for they are conditioned by the of material nature. Therefore, the words Gunai Vichitraha are used here. In this material world, there are 8,400,000 species of life. As spirit souls, they are all transcendental to this material world. Why then do they exhibit themselves in different stages of life? The answer is given here. They are under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because they were created by the material energy, their bodies are made of the material elements. Covered by the material body, the spiritual identity is lost, and therefore the word mumuhe is used here, indicating that they have forgotten their spiritual identity. This forgetfulness of spiritual identity is present in the jivas, or souls, who are conditioned, being subject to be covered by the energy of material nature. Jnana guha, is another word used. Guha means covering. Because the knowledge of the minute conditioned souls is covered, they are exhibited in so many species of life. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th chapter, 1st canto, the living entities are illusioned by the material energy. In the verse also it is stated that the eternal living entities are covered by different modes and three-colored, red, white, and blue living entities. Red is the representation of the mode of passion, white is the representation of the mode of ignorance, and blue is the representation of the mode of ignorance. These modes of material nature belong to the material energy, and therefore the living entities under these different modes of material nature, kinds of material body, because they are conditioned soul, means the material body. This is called moha, or is repeatedly said in the Katha Upanishad that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is never affected by the influence of material souls or the minute infinitesimal parts and parts who are by the influence of material. Text 6. Because of forgetfulness, the energy as his field of activities, and thus actuated, he applies the activities to him. The forgetful living entity can to a man who is under the influence of disease and has become man who acts without control and yet thinks he control. The conditioned soul, whatever is done under the influence of the material, actually the soul in his pure state of ignorance should be in Krishna consciousness. When a person is not acting in Krishna consciousness, he is understood. Consciousness cannot consciousness. The material consciousness simply has to be purified. One becomes liberated by accepting Krishna or the Supreme Lord as master, and by changing the mode of consciousness from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness. Translation. Material consciousness is the cause of one life in which conditions are enforced by the entity by the material energy. Although the spirit soul does not do anything and is transcendental to such activities, he is thus affected by conditional life. The Maya who does not differentiate each time, but the word pastime, the activities of the Lord. The Mayavadis use the word and say that even if the living entity has become a stool eating, he is also enjoying his pastimes. This is a most dangerous interpretation. Actually, the Supreme Lord is the leader and maintainer of all living entities. Pastimes are transcendental to any material activity. Such pastimes of the Lord cannot be dragged to the level of the conditional activities of the entities. In conditional life, the living entity actually is as if whatever the material dictates, the conditioned soul does. No responsibility. He is witness of the actual act. Lord, if a living entity is constitutional position is to serve Krishna, and he tries, then however conditioned he may be, the influence of Maya immediately vanishes. This is stated in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter. Krishna takes charge of anyone who surrenders to him in helplessness, or conditional life is removed. The spirit soul is actually Satchidananda, eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. Of Maya, however, he suffers from continued birth, death, disease, and old age. One has serious to cure this condition of material existence, transfer himself to Krishna consciousness, for thus his long suffering may be mitigated without difficulty. In summary, the suffering of the conditioned soul is due to his attachment to material nature. Attachment should thus be transferred from matter. The cause of the conditioned soul's presiding deities, the demigods, is the material nature. This is understood by learned men. The feeling of happiness and distress of the soul who is transcendent. Purport. Lord descends to this material world. He comes as a person by his own Atma Maya. He is not by any superior. He comes by his own, and this can be called his pastime. It is stated that the conditioned soul is forced to take a certain type of body and senses under the three modes of material nature. That body is not received according to his own choice. In other words, a conditioned soul has no free choice. He has to accept a certain type of body according to his karma. But when there are bodily reactions as felt in happiness and distress, it is to be understood that the cause is the spirit soul himself. If he so desires, the spirit soul can change this conditional life of dualities by choosing to serve Krishna. The living entity is the cause of his own suffering, but he can also be the cause of his eternal happiness when he wants to engage in Krishna consciousness. A suitable body is offered to him by the internal potency, the spiritual energy of the Lord, and when he wants to satisfy his senses, a material body is offered. Thus it is his free choice to accept a spiritual body or a material body. But once the body is accepted, he has to enjoy or suffer the consequences. The Mayavadi philosopher's presentation is that the living entity enjoys his pastimes by accepting the body of a hog. This theory is not acceptable, however, because the word pastime implies voluntary acceptance for enjoyment. Therefore, this interpretation is most misleading. When there is enforced acceptance for suffering, it is not pastime. The Lord's pastimes and the conditioned living entity's acceptance of karmic reaction are not on the same level. Yes.
Did you say that last sentence again?
Yeah. Pastimes and the conditioned living entity's acceptance of karmic reaction are not on the same level, as Mayavadi says. They say. Text 9. We'll do the last one. 9. So Devahuti now starts speaking. Devahuti said, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and his energies, for both of these are the causes of this manifest and unmanifest creation. Purport. Prakriti, or material nature, is connected with both the Supreme Lord and the living entities, just as a woman is connected with her husband as wife and with her children as a mother. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he impregnates Mother Nature with children, living entities, and thereafter all species of living entities become manifest. The relationship of all living entities with material nature has been explained. Now, an understanding of the relationship between material nature and the Supreme Lord is sought by Devahuti. The product of that relationship is stated to be the manifest and unmanifest material world. The unmanifest material world is the subtle Mahatattva, and from that Mahatattva, the material manifestation, as it is said, material energy is impregnated, and then everything is born. In Bhagavad Gita, that under his Yakshena, under the direction and by his will, nature is working. It is not that nature works blindly. Understanding the position of the conditioned soul in relation to material nature, Devahuti wanted to know how nature works under the direction of the Lord and what the relationship is between the material nature and the Lord. In other words, she wanted to learn the characteristics of the Supreme Lord in relation to the material nature. The relationship of the living entities with matter and that of the Supreme Lord with matter are certainly not on the same level. Although when it is said that they are bewildered, the Mayavadi philosophers ascribe bewilderment to the Supreme Lord. But that is not applicable. The Lord is never bewildered. That is the difference between personalists and impersonalists. Devahuti is not unintelligent. She has enough intelligence to understand that the living entities are not on the level of the Supreme Lord. Because the living entities are infinitesimal, they become bewildered or conditioned by material nature. But this does that the Supreme Lord is also conditioned or bewildered. The difference between the conditioned soul and the Lord is that the Lord is the Lord, the master of material nature, and he is therefore not subject to its control. He is controlled neither by spirit nor by material nature. He is the supreme controller himself, and he cannot be compared to the ordinary living entities who are controlled by the laws of material nature. Two words used in this verse are Sat and Asat. The cosmic manifestation is Asat, it does not exist. But the material energy of the Supreme Lord is Sat, or ever. Material nature is ever existing in its subtle form as the energy of the Lord, but it sometimes manifests this non-existent or temporary existent nature, the cosmos. An analogy may be made with the father and mother. The mother and the father exist, but sometimes the mother begets children. Similarly, this cosmic manifestation, which comes from the unmanifest material nature of the Supreme Lord, sometimes appears and again disappears. But the material nature is ever existing, and the Lord is the supreme cause for both the subject, and the Supreme Lord is the supreme cause for both the subtle and gross manifestation of this material world. So we end here for today. No? Okay, only read for an hour without getting tired. I'm kind of skipping the... You didn't notice? Yeah, I noticed. Yeah. At the beginning was like half an hour. I really needed, okay. I'm explaining to everyone also online, they can hear. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki